talking about masculinity today. We were talking about police earlier. That's certainly a role that has men and women in it. But the attack on police is just one aspect of the attacks that are going on in our society about our traditional beliefs. We've talked before on the program about drag queen story hours. We've talked about queer theory in schools. Well, another aspect along this full spectrum assault is an assault on traditional masculinity. And we see that, for example, in saying, in insisting that we have non-binary people, for example. Yeah. And so now boys and young men, boys grow up to be men now in this environment with the background of or within the context of a society that is essentially saying or suggesting, sometimes outright telling them that their natural instincts are wrong and the traditional notions of manhood are wrong. And fortunately, we have some people in the church who are addressing that. We have with us today from Tradition, Family, and Property, John Paul Tomba. John, welcome.
Good morning, Brent.
Tell us, what is the TFP doing in terms of programs with boys and young men that you work on yourself?
Yeah, so with boys and young men, we have 2 different age groups we work with. So we've got the younger boys and we have the university age students. What would you like to hear first? Like we do for the younger boys, we do what we call to chivalry camps. And the idea with call to chivalry camps is exactly what you're saying. You've got basically everything in society is working against these boys, whether it be, broken families or a fatherless household, or just the fact that the world's beating them down and telling them that, they don't actually need to grow up and be a man, things like that. So the idea with the call to chivalry camps is that, first off, we take the boys out of context. We'll go to a certain location. This summer it was in Louisiana at a retreat center. We actually have one coming up in November in the Ozark region of Arkansas. But the idea is that we give the boys Catholic role models and we take them into a Catholic environment and give them a chance to really just be boys, but in a Catholic environment promoting the virtues of chivalry, and especially with talks on Catholic heroes and crusaders.
What's super interesting about that is, I know I have some boys at my parish who go to the Call to Chivalry camps. At least they go to the ones that are monthly. Not the camps are not old enough yet, but they come to me and they're like, oh my goodness, I can't wait until I'm older so I can go to the Call of Chivalry camp. And they're really excited, and they always look forward to the monthly times where they can go and learn how to sword fight, but also hear these edifying talks. Could you talk about a little bit about the what is chivalry? And one thing that really stood out to me whenever I went to go to one of your Call to Chivalry camps was the fact that you'll serve the kids, they're young kids, but you serve them food in such a way that it's like they're adults eating at a fine dining almost. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah, exactly. So one thing the boys do say about the camps is how good the food is. But anyways, we always eat with real plates and real silverware. We want to be as civilized as possible because one, that's how you become a man, but also boys sometimes don't have that at home. Sometimes they're not necessarily even taught manners. You're not necessarily dealing with the cream of the crop at these camps. So the idea is that, take the boys into a different environment and show them how to become men.
There's a gentleman at my church, my parish, I know, who has volunteered in the past as sort of a, not exactly big brother type, but or foster father type, but it's sort of a mentor for a young grade school child. And he told me that the first thing he taught this boy was how to shake hands. I mean, think about that. We've reached a point in society where there are boys that are growing up and they have to be explicitly taught how to shake hands.
Or look people in the eye.
Or look people in the eye. Yeah. That's exactly right. So, John Paul, these chivalry camps, what kind of programs do you have that boys are telling Adrian they can't wait till they get there? I mean, do you have programs, for example, to help them to choose proper pronouns?
Absolutely not. The pronouns at our camps are him, he and him. That's it. No, and also the camps are boys only for the reason that you don't have any distractions at the camp, pure and simple. But no, the Call to Chivalry camps are, and the reason Adrian's saying, well, I was the same way. When I was a boy, under the age for the camp starts at 12. We go from 12 to 18. I couldn't wait to go to the camps. I went and visited once, and I saw all the boys, standing at attention position before meals, and then everyone's hands were folded at the same time, and everyone prayed. And also, when everybody prays, it's not very often you get to hear, 40 men praying together at the same time. It's really an impressive sound. So everything about the camps, it's militant, because we're the church militant, even though we're not a military organization. But we also teach the boys how to use a sword. Most of the team members, we were actually trained by a fencing master up in Pennsylvania, so we're pretty handy with swords. We make foam swords for the boys to use, so nobody gets hurt, obviously. But we follow St. John Bosco's method, which is you have to work the body, the soul, and the mind every day. And one of those activities is 2.5 hours of field games. So it might be a game with a ball, although we don't play football or soccer or even baseball at the camps. We play different games, which is a topic for another time. But what the boys really like are also the sword battles, and that goes completely against this new notion of the man that we're supposed to follow today.
Yeah, that's so true, John Paul. I was thinking as you were saying that there's a tendency now with our modern age to look at boys and they see like the energy that young men have. Young boys they're like balls of energy, right? And so there's a tendency to see that and say, oh, that boy, he has ADD. He has to be on medication. We got to temper it. Whereas back in the day, it used to be like these boys were able to express that energy that they have. And that's a gift from God. Do you see that the kids that come into these programs, are they able to express that at home, or is that something you have to tease out of them through the programs?
It depends. Some of the boys I would say have that, like they're kept pretty docile at home. Not necessarily that they're just put on medication, but you'd be surprised, even the shyest boy who you can't even get to speak, and that's just how some people are, that's fine, but you give him a sword and he already knows what to do with it. And it's amazing. It's really amazing. And even some of the little ones, the last fall camp we did in Arkansas, I was filming with my phone. I saw firsthand one of the boys, he was the smallest one at the camp. And there was a boy who was about 16, but he was like 6'3". This little boy, the small one, he grabbed one of the swords in the battle and just ran at the oldest boy, and he got him. He was just fearless out there, but he's a little introverted kid. Yeah. But you put a sword in his hand, and it brings out the best in the boys. It really does.
Well, this is, this gets at the real falsehood of the modern idea of gender identity, which believes that it's entirely a social construct, that there's nothing biological, that there's nothing inherent or natural in being a boy or a girl or a man or a woman. A few years ago, in 2018, the American Psychological Association released their guidelines on how to treat men. And that's where the phrase toxic masculinity really took off. And again, when you look at those guidelines, and to be fair to the APA, at least one of the divisions has backed off of that at least a little bit. But the general idea, when you look at their guidelines, is that gender is a social construct, as if chromosomes and hormones and your natural biology has absolutely nothing to do with who you are as a person. Your story about putting a sword in the little boy's hands, this whole idea has been building for years, and that story about putting the sword in a little boy's hands reminds me of an article I read in one of the national news magazines years ago, probably about 30 years ago, because this has been building for decades. And the article talked about little boys and little girls, and it said that when these people were frustrated because when they would give dolls to little boys to play with, they would hit each other over the head and point them at each other and say, bang, bang. After the break, we'll talk about your programs for older boys. We'll be right back. John Paul, you talked about the chivalry camps and letting boys participate in sports and games and competitive activities and putting swords in their hands, and how a lot of them really come to life there. What about older boys and young men? What kind of work do you do with them?
So the young men, it's a little different dynamic. Obviously, they're college age, so early 20s, at least over 18, early 20s. What we do with them is we'll actually go to universities, and we will debate with other students. So just recently, we were at University of Houston. Adrian was actually there with us. It was a good day, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Excuse me. We will. I'm trying to say here. the idea with the older boys is that we give them more formation, because especially coming out of college, you got a lot working against you at university nowadays, especially when you're trying to be a traditional Catholic. It's very, very hard to do. So we will actually have talks about Catholic heroes. We may watch a documentary. We will have discussions about, for example, true devotion to Our Lady, open to those young men who are college age. And then once they're prepared, once they're ready to go out to battle, that's when we'll head out to the universities. And we just go to the university with a banner. Let's say the banner will say, pray the rosary to end abortion. And you can take your pick with the university. You can imagine what happens when a bunch of men. You've seen the videos? Okay, yeah. Great. If anyone hasn't seen the videos, you can go to TFP Student Action on YouTube. It's I think you'll find it very interesting. But the idea is that the young men, that is our crusade nowadays. It's our crusade isn't, with swords and armor anymore. It's with ideals, and it's with the rosary, and it's with arguments, logic. So that's what we do on the universities. And I don't think we have time to go into detail on specific examples from a university, but that's mainly what we do with the older gentlemen.
And what about you also do these not so much camps? I guess it's more called like conferences. You have conferences throughout the year. Sometimes local conferences that happen in specific cities, but also you have the national conferences. They all have a couple times a year, and that's some of them are made for just young men. Some are for specifically aimed to college students. Talk about those a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So we call those TFP Student Action Conferences. That's our young men's action. The idea is to take the young men out of context, out of their day-to-day lives, and give them a Catholic environment, especially to discuss the issues of the day around other like-minded Catholic young men, because it can be easy to feel alone at a university at thinking you're the only good Catholic on the campus. Yeah. We had one recently. We were blessed to be able to do it at it's called Running Cougar Ranch last year. And we had, I want to say it was at least 15 college students from around the country. There were talks. We flew in older, more experienced TF members to give talks on, why the need for student action, why the need for traditional masculinity, and of course our ever-present theme, true devotion to Our Lady. We will be doing another one it won't be this year, it'll be next year, straddling the new year. At our headquarters in Spring Grove, Pennsylvania, our TFP Student Action Conference. We hope to have as many as 20 young men there this year. And I think Adrian was at one of those a few years ago. Was it Adrian?
Yeah, 4 years ago at this point.
Yeah, exactly. It was a long time ago.
So how many conferences do you all have in a typical year, and how many college campuses are you all involved with?
So the conferences, it's not as many as we'd like, because it takes a lot of organization. We don't have that much manpower here in Texas, unfortunately. We try to do two, one locally and then one nationally, which we were able to do this year. And in terms of universities, oh goodness, just from my experience being in the TFP full-time 5 years now, oh my, I don't know if I could count all the universities I've been to actually, but a lot of the big names, George Washington University, we've been to a few times. Villanova, of course, this is back when I lived up north. Now I live here in Houston. Here in Houston, we've been to Rice, we've been to U of H main campus, we've been to UST a few times. Let's see, there's others, the names are escaping me now, but we try to go at least once a week here in Houston, and we'll rally the troops.
And that's across the board on all the TFP centers, correct?
Pretty much. If there's enough members there at the TFP center, we try to go somewhere every week.
How many TFP centers are there in the entire country?
There's 13.
And so are you all pretty much operating from coast to coast?
Yes, we literally coast to coast. We have our northeastern centers, and then we have a few centers in California as well, and then even down southeast in Florida we have 2.
That's great. John Paul, I'm thinking about our boys.
Yeah.
Something that I've observed. I'm not that old, everybody. I'm 32 years old.
Yikes!
But,
you're so old.
Yeah, compared to you, but but I'm not that old. But I am seeing this trend, right? And it's a really worrying trend for me because I now have daughters. I have one in the oven. One's 1 year old. And I'm thinking about her future, and, God is going to choose her vocation. And whatever it is, praise be to God. If it's marriage, may it be holy and pleasing to him. If it's religious life, praise be to God. May all of her life be for God. But I think about marriage sometimes, and I think, man, the pickings out there are pretty slim, because a lot of the boys that I'm seeing, a lot of the people my age, frankly, they're stuck in this perpetual adolescence. They can't just like be men. They're slaves to their passions. They're hooked on video games. They waste so much time. They waste and squander their potential. How much of the work are you guys doing to undo all of that? Have you seen that personally? Is it a lot of work? What are we talking about? Is it just like a specific kind of guy that you have to work with to get rid of that, or is it all across the board, perpetual adolescence? That's what you're seeing.
I wouldn't. That's a good question. I wouldn't say across the board perpetual adolescence, but what I am seeing. Just as the generations go by, and I mean, it's painfully obvious to all y'all, that perpetual adolescence, you're seeing it more and more. Because I remember the first time, it was years ago, back when I was going to Call to Chivalry camps. That was the first time I had heard of a grown man playing video games. I didn't know that was a thing. I mean, we all did it as kids. And that's one thing that we do not allow at the Call to Chivalry camps. If you permit me to go back to that for a second. There's no video games and there's no cell phones, and everyone's happy. Let that sink in for a minute, right?
Yeah.
But even with the older guys, the joy, the happiness that comes from going out there to a university campus and doing battle, and it is a battle because you have people coming to you with tough questions. And for instance, we were at U of H last Tuesday, and there were people that approached us, and they had questions, about TFP and more about the whole LGBT issue, mainly. But these people, they were par excellence these people who are stuck in a perpetual adolescence. God bless them. I don't know what their situation is, but some of them didn't look like they really knew how to take care of themselves, but this is an institution of higher learning. So we're really trying to draw out, the good people who they think they're alone, and we're exposing the other side for who they really are. If I could have just one more thing, personally, from my personal experience, we had more support actually this time than I've personally seen at a university this last Tuesday.
Yeah, I agree. I was there, and it was surprising, but it's also surprising how many people are like, I support you guys, but I can't do it. I can't actually associate.
The thumbs up behind the textbook.
The thumbs up, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of guys like that. But, it's interesting that you mentioned that. There's a number of things there. One thing I just want to mention in passing is that, the way people dress, especially at college campuses, they dress like they're going to sleep. They dress in pajamas going off to class. And I wore jeans and I wore a collared shirt. And I thought, I was like, oh, I'm dressed really well. I'm dressed in a very appropriate way. And it wasn't until I met the TFP that I realized, I go, wow, I look like a slob. But at a different point, and going back to talking about the perpetual adolescence, it really broke my heart. I went to one of your camps to help out a couple years ago, and one of the boys I was sitting at with lunch, I really like the whole idea of like making sure that you get rid of the tendencies towards frivolous conversation and elevating the conversation. So we're talking with the boys, and it just came up that one of the boys like, yeah, when I was in, he was 12 years old. He was like, yeah, about 3 or 4 years ago, I started watching pornography. And he was like, yeah, it was horrible and yada, yada, yada.
Man.
And he was talking about how grateful he was for the TFP camp. And I was like heartbroken. I was like, this kid is 12 years old. 4 years ago, he was like 8 years old whenever that happened. That is heartbreaking. Can you talk a little bit about like what situation are these kids coming to y'all as, and a little bit about like the idea of elevating their conversation and getting rid of the tendencies in their conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. So tendency in conversation nowadays tends to, amongst the boys, with men it's different, usually devolves into politics, but amongst boys it tends to devolve into either sports, specifically sports players, or celebrities. It's amazing how much these kids know about celebrities, even though they're 12. But also, or video games in general. We want to elevate the conversation to higher things, like even just basically, what do you want to do with your life? Why are you here? Do you pray the rosary every day? Just important questions that we need to be asking. Also telling them about saints, giving them real Catholic role models, because they only have celebrities and football players.
Well, there's despite all of the attempts to just basically destroy traditional masculinity, despite this pretense that that masculinity is simply a social construct, or gender roles are a social construct, there's still that natural reality. And we still see that coming out with a lot of young men. And you see that in certain phenomena in our society. For example, look at the Joe Rogan podcast. Here's a man who's a comedian and an MMA commentator. He gets tens of millions of listeners, predominantly young men. Look at Jordan Peterson, the famous professor from Canada, who's now giving talks on the Bible, he's a professor and he sells out auditoriums. And who is his dominant audience, at least to a large extent? Young men. Yeah. So there's a hunger out there for young men who are looking for outlets for traditional manhood. And, we're grateful that TFP is there to assist them from boyhood up through college.
One question we got from Annette Padilla, she said, what about for girls? Do you have anything for girls, Mr. John Paul? What do you got there?
So I get this question all the time, and I understand why. We're an all-men's organization, so we don't run a girls' camp, unfortunately. Maybe we'll look into that in the future, but for now, the simplest answer is, unfortunately, we don't have a girls' camp. Around the country, I mean, there's tens of thousands of ladies and girls that help us out, whether it be, provide a meal for one of our traveling caravans, or donating a tank of gas, or attending a rosary rally, or even leading a rosary rally, things like that. But a specific camp for girls, unfortunately, we don't have that yet.
Yeah, it's good work. The ladies have been very helpful to the work of the TFP. I've seen y'all have come over to our place, and my sister, my mom cooked for. It was hilarious. We went out campaigning, right? And we went out on NASA Bay, and we were out there. Some people were like, "Where are the women?" Exactly. And Mr. Cesar, he goes, "At home making cookies," and they got furious. And we were like, "What? No, they literally are. Like they made cookies for us. It was really nice." And they were talking about my mom and my sister. They made us cookies. So it was pretty funny. Another question we had. Oh, it's funny. Jane says, didn't you hear math is racist now, Rudy? Jeez. Ridiculous. Kim Wilcox says, that's great prep for the Knights of Columbus. Have you been to Purdue University? St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Center is on the Purdue campus and would make a great place to hold a camp. My daughter goes to college there for audiology. I like to see that kind of presence on the campus. What are y'all, so when y'all go to college campuses, y'all don't really set up do camps at college campuses. Usually it's more kind of pamphleting, rosary rallies, that kind of thing. Could you talk a little bit about, just respond to that question?
Yeah, so the camp is completely different than the university campaign. The camp, we always take it out to our own venue, so we can control the ambience, we can control who's there, things like that. The college campus, you never know what you're going to get, so it'd be pretty much impossible to hold a camp there. And also, we don't hold camps for university-age students. If that's confusing, I apologize. But we normally with universities, we do our campaign and we get out because there's usually hostility, and we want to kind of what's the word? Not hit and run, but the university campuses, we usually distribute our pamphlets, and then we have to take people back to their school or go get some lunch or something like that. So we don't do camps on university campuses.
Yep. Praise be to God. A lot of good work there. Lori wants to know, she said, do you have a model that we could use? Lori, do you mean a model for how to do rosary rallies, or what specifically? Assuming she means how to do rosary rallies, do y'all have a model of how that people could use for that kind of thing?
So how to do rosary rallies. There is an instructional video. I think it's on American Needs Fatima's YouTube channel. If you want to check that out. Of course, American Needs Fatima is our sister organization that actually organizes the rosary rallies. So like Adrian was saying, assuming you mean model for a rosary rally, that's what I would say.
Okay, they said Lori came back. She responded for the TFP program. Yeah, do you have a model that we could use for? I guess you mean like for like camps, like if you wanted to imitate TFP camps. A friend of mine, actually, I mentioned him before, Timothy. He's a friend of mine. He started doing those at his parish at Our Lady of Walsingham in Houston, and he modeled after the TFP called chivalry camps. So it's they don't really have a model that you could like download or things like that. It's just by talking to the guys, and then we just kind of imitate it to the best of our ability in whatever situation we're in. And I've also invited the TFP to a parish I was helping out at to host a retreat, so they could help give talks and lead a program for the boys, because we had a confirmation group, and coincidentally, the confirmation group was nothing but boys. It was just a weird situation where there were no girls getting confirmed that year, which was, I guess, kind of sad, but at the same time, it worked out for us because we had the TFP come in and we just had a Calder Chivalry camp. So if someone wanted to like do like, I want to kind of do something like that at my parish, what would you suggest?
We do just day-long programs. Actually, it's not even a day-long. It's more like a long afternoon. We'll have the boys over to our house. Again, it's not a full-fledged camp, but so there's a few basic things we always include. We always include a talk. We always include a meal, and we always include sword fighting or games of some sort. So that's a basic schema you can follow.
And another great question from Jay Koch. He wants to know, Rudy, what video games does Rudy waste his time with?
All right. I have the website up.
Exposed.
I want to preface by saying this. Look, I'm not proud of this. And I think this is a good example for parents out there to realize the amount of time that your children are wasting on video games. Now, granted, this amount of time that I've played on this is just one game, was spread over 5 years. But it gives you an idea of how much time I could have used to do something more productive, like saving my soul. So for this particular game, this is just one out of many that I played. There's Destiny 1 and Destiny 2. Destiny 1, I played 713 hours and 52 minutes. Destiny 2, I played 1,912 hours and 8 minutes. So if I was to add all of those things together, let me do math. This little racist construct here, this math. Let me add these up here. 1912.
I'm guessing it's an hour and a quarter a day, hour and a half a day.
Oh, no, this is more. That's 2,625 hours. And if we divide that into 24 hours, that amounts to 100 days straight.
Bruh.
109 days straight. And that's just one particular video game.
109 days.
Video
gone.
games are a scourge. If you're a parent, I would never, ever introduce children to video games. They're addictive.
Yeah.
The people who create the video games, they consult psychologists, psychiatrists. They make them as addictive as possible so that they retain your children, your adults. This is why there's perpetual adolescence in young men. They're just absorbed into this.
Well, they
really
actually trigger a chemical release in the brain.
It triggers this addiction to our passions, and if you don't have the ability to get out of it, your whole life just goes down the tubes. I mean, really, we're facing people not being able to even function at like the bare minimum of their potential these days. Like, it's not just video games. It's streaming services. It's Instagram, constantly scrolling on Instagram, constantly scrolling on TikTok, constantly watching videos. It's crazy to me.
Yeah.
And this is just one video game over 5 years. I mean, this is 109 days straight. That's
and
crazy.
It's not a matter of choosing to do something that is more productive, and that something more productive always means it has to be work or unpleasurable. A lot of people enjoy reading. Reading can be pleasurable, and at the same time, you can be reading something that really increases your knowledge. You don't always have to read, 7-story mansion, or interior castle. you can read history or something that's more informative and yet that is still enjoyable for you. And that's just one example. If you're engaged in an athletic activity like sports, that's good for your body. It's also good for your mind because it gives you that mental break and that rest and relaxation while at the same time helping you to focus on developing those physical skills. But with the video games, they trigger a dopamine release. And, they trigger that neurotransmitter in the brain. And you're right, there is that addictive quality. And look, I've played video games. I've enjoyed them. But you're right. We have this perpetual adolescence, especially among young men in our society. And it's interesting when TFP says they put swords in the hands of little boys and they really respond. It reminds me of when an acquaintance of mine at another parish was trying to lure me into joining the Knights of Columbus, which I haven't joined largely because I don't want to make a commitment when I don't have the time to follow through given my other commitments.
You don't need the life insurance.
But one of the things he said to me was, because he had his own right there, he said, you get a sword, and there's something appealing about that.
Absolutely.
There is. It's like I was telling a guy at work, I live in central Houston, so I live in a small apartment, and I like it. I'm happy where I am. It's what used to be a good neighborhood before the increasing crime. I don't really have a need for a lot of power tools, but there's just something about it. When I see an ad on YouTube or TV for a power tool, I just instinctively think, I need that. I think I should have a power drill. I could find something to do with that.
Oh, I'd find something to do with it.
And here's the thing. In the office I work in, the career progression is that women will come in after college and then after law school. That's about the time people are getting married, and that's about the time people are having children. And then they'll have the kid, and they'll bring the child to the office while they're on maternity leave or after they come back from maternity leave. And then sometimes over the first couple of years, somebody who used to work in the office will come back, or somebody who has had a young child will bring their child to the office. It never fails. Look, the people who want to say that gender is a social construct and say that and believe that all they want, they are denying reality. Who is it that responds when these women bring their little children into the office? It's always the women.
Yep.
Always, always, always. There will be a group of 5 or 6 or 7 women there, and they're thrilled. And yeah, the men might notice, but it's just not the same.
It's funny you talk about that because, our friend Victor Mendoza is in our YouTube chat right now. And I met him in person for the first time at Regina Caeli over the weekend at the Fall Festival. And Victor makes leather work. He does leather work.
I've seen it.
Yeah, cool. he gave us a prize to give away a while ago. And Victor, I'm sitting in his booth and I'm looking at his stuff and I'm like, dude, the masculine urge just buy all the leather products.
That's right.
All the leather products. I was like, I want it all. And I'm like, I don't have any money right now. I need to hold off.
Even if you don't have a knife to put in the sheath, you need the sheath.
You're right.
Sheath.
Exactly.
That's exactly right.
So he makes and that's another thing. He makes leather sheaths. He makes leather anything basically. So shout out to Victor. It's a pleasure meeting you. But yeah, no, it was really horrible. A couple of comments here. Jay Koch made the comment. I think Rudy said to stop watching YouTube videos, but aren't we streaming on YouTube right now? Yeah. Okay. I tell you what, Jacob. I tell you what.
We're gonna blow your mind.
If you give up all social media, then I absolve you of never watching CDT again. However, if you're not going to give up all social media, then you're required to keep watching CDT. That's going to be the rule here. Tammy says, young people are also texting all the time instead of talking on the phones, and they're missing the human interaction that has emotion. Yeah. And you say young people, but however, it's the same thing for older people. All the people who complain about young people have adopted all the same vices. So it's like, it's everyone now. And then Brooks Durham said that, let's see if I can find that comment. Someone had made a comment about their relative who lost their job because they were playing video games. They said they went off to get a job and they missed their first day of work because they were playing video games and they got fired. So I'm like, yeah, there you go, folks.
Brent, Jay Cook wants to know what your dream power tool is.
I think you've got to start with a drill, don't you?
A drill?
You got to have a drill.
I don't know. For me, it's a table saw. John Paul?
Sawzall. The Sawzall. I grew up doing stuff like that with my grandpa. The Sawzall is just your handiest thing. Get through anything.
True.
And it's a lot of fun to use.
It was Alberto. Alberto said, "My relative lost his day. Let me read that again. My relative lost his day.
Can you read it in
release
English
to college from work to play video games and lost his job. Lost his day, released to college." Yeah, I don't know. That basically is what that says. I think I summarized it.
Alejandrina says, "I believe that video game thing. I have a niece whose partner plays video games all day and night, and she's out working. That is scandalous."
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yikes.
Talk about a crisis in masculinity.
You know what that guy
Let
needs?
go and work while you play
get married
video
while she's
games all
working.
day.
You know what that guy needs? A nail gun. There's a tool.
To the head,
No, not to
through,
that.
through the Xbox.
to the hands, right?
Through the
Xbox.
That's exactly right.
Or a sword through the
But while
Xbox.
we're talking about power
Seriously.
tools, I got to say the nail gun. That's creative.
Nail gun's a good
Nail
one.
gun's fun.
Dude, do I have a second, Adrian? So, just
go
one more
ahead.
thing to add about the sword. I completely forgot about this earlier. Case in point, you're saying about the kids walking, like men's and women's brains are different. The new kids walking to the studio and stuff. Well, the other day, so we call them Don Bosco programs. We do the day long, the afternoon long events for the boys at the house. And one thing that they really like doing is we've got swords around the house, some sharper than others. We use them as decoration. They're just a very manly thing. But we use them to cut water jugs. And you'd be surprised how easy it is to just swing a sword through a milk jug full of water. It's great fun, actually, and teaches the boys how to use a sword in a safe way.
What are we
But
talking about? Scimitars? Talking about
just a
medieval
European
sword?
hand and a half. It's got ours has I should have brought it with me, actually. Ours has a Templar cross on the hilt. It's pretty heavy, so you got to use it with two hands. Like, I can't actually use it with one hand, but
And it's sharp.
it's pretty sharp.
Yeah.
Wow.
But what we did was it got rust on it. You're not supposed to keep it in the sheath. Somebody put it in the sheath. I'm not going to point fingers. So it got rust on it, so I need to get the
Mr.
rust.
William. He's like, I refuse to talk. He's like, I won't even laugh.
Stay it out of it. No, it's okay. But so it had rust all over the pommel and stuff. So long story short, I need to get the rust off. I go to Ace Hardware, that has a
Steel
post
wool.
office in it. Well, so I asked the guy, and I bring the sword with me. Because why not? It's Texas. It's a free
is
country. I'm going to
Texas.
open carry a sword. Why not?
It's legal in Texas.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Which
So
amendment is that?
I guess second, right? Bear
Well, the
arms.
Second Amendment
second,
is the right to bear arms.
an
It doesn't
arm,
say
yeah, but-
firearms.
Yeah.
It just says arms.
arms, yeah.
Don't give Biden any ideas.
But yeah, exactly. But so long story short, I go in there and I asked the guy, about a chemical thing, and he convinced me to get a Dremel. That's a fun power tool.
That's another good one.
It's a good
yeah,
one. Handy.
that's actually probably the first tool. Yeah.
But so I buy the Dremel and stuff, and he's looking at the sword, and I took every opportunity to just draw the thing in the store and show him, and so he's like, "Whoa, is that like real?" I said, "Yeah, of course it's real. I cut stuff with it." So, well, can I see it? So, of course you can see it here. So I just handed it to him, and he just draws the thing out in the aisle. And so everybody's coming around looking at this sword. So I get the Dremel and leave, and I come back the next day, and I thank the guy for the Dremel, and I show him the part that I've sanded. It's all shiny. It's not rusty anymore. And then another guy shows up, Ace employee, and he says, wait, did you come into the post office yesterday? I said, yeah, that was me. He said, were you carrying the sword? I said, yeah, I had the sword with me that day. He says, okay, good. So I did see what I thought I saw. I'm just making sure. There was a guy walking around with a sword in the store. Okay, great.
I'm pretty sure that's a felony.
Nah.
Definitely not.
Federal property.
So
You never know.
Yeah, at the end of it all, so he draws the thing there in the middle of the store, and all the men come around looking at it. Everybody's looking at us, and the story was great. It was like an apostolate, doing evangelization with this sword. So I get to the register, and there's this really nice lady behind the register, and I said, I bet you can't guess what I'm doing with this Dremel. I'm going to clean off this sword. And she says, why do you need a sword? Like, she didn't understand.
What do you mean?
Why do you need a sword? And I said, well, what man doesn't need a sword?
Well, I mean,
Maybe
you're taking back
why do you
Jerusalem.
need your earrings?
So
I'm going to have to take back
could've
Jerusalem
said-
eventually, right?
You could have said for the same reason I need a gun.
Yeah, exactly. But, so I ended up talking to her about it, and I said, well, we cut jugs with it, and her eyes kind of lit up, and she says, I think that's something I might like to try, actually. So it's just funny. Like, it's restored now, and like 10 of these ACE employees are like involved in this sword project. It's great. But
it's so interesting how much people just love weapons. Like you see, especially medieval weapons, people just like are attracted to it when you hear it. Real quickly before we go forward, Jane says, what's the name of Victor's company? Yes, I'm going to give a shout out to Victor. He has great stuff. It's Mendoza Leathercraft on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, etc. And Victor Mendoza, here's his card if anybody can read that. I don't know, you probably can't. Light's too bright, too much of a glare. But anyway, that's just look up Mendoza Leathercraft on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and you can have that. Just don't get TikTok, actually. Just don't do that. Craig says, hey, wait, I came in late today, so I can play with swords. Bro, I'm in. Where do I sign up? So that's pretty awesome. If you have any, Craig, if you have sons, which I know you do, find a local TFP group wherever you're at and bring them over for a sword demonstration. You know, I really liked whenever I came, I believe it was Mr. Zachariah. At the time, he was giving a presentation on the meaning behind the sword and how the sword is a distinctively Christian weapon, and the relationship between that and the Holy Rosary. Can you talk a little bit about that real quick?
So I think I remember what you're talking about. The way he phrased it was he started out by saying, okay, what was the primary weapon of the knight? And he's holding a sword, so that wasn't fair. But it really wasn't fair. But what was the primary weapon of the knight? Everybody's afraid to answer because it's so obvious. They all said, the sword. One after the other, no, it was. He says, no, it wasn't. Everybody's, what? And then he pulls the rosary out of his pocket. Okay, well, the primary weapon of the night was the rosary. And that's something I wanted to touch on a little bit earlier, but we didn't get a chance. We ran out of time. That was what made the night. This idea that, I never actually saw the movie myself, but Rambo, the idea that like that type of guy is the ideal man. Well, no, the ideal man is actually virtuous, and the ideal man prays. The knights prayed the rosary, so that was the connection with that. That the knights, they could go from, besieging the walls of, trying to take back Seville in Spain, the Reconquest, and they could go into the church and pray devoutly. Like they weren't just brutes. They had that other side of them as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
No, that makes perfect sense, and we didn't have a chance to get into this during the regular show, although you and I mentioned it briefly beforehand. But men have that natural desire to use their strength, and when properly raised, when properly formed, we as Catholics believe in formation, men channel a lot of that energy and desire into the role of being a protector, and they can do that by being police officers, by serving in the military. How many movies and TV shows do we have about police officers in the military? And yes, we have women doing those things these days, but that's a natural for men. But also, men are important protectors in their roles as husbands and fathers, which is where your all's work, no doubt, will ultimately bear the greatest fruit.
That's what we're hoping. Yeah, it's again just showing them that you don't have to follow this model. It's one, piety is for men too. That we've lost that a lot over the years. Yeah. That you can be pious and still be a warrior at the same time.
All right, I got to make sure that William says at least something today. So you gotta grab that mic in front of you and pull it down.
You got this.
You got to pull it up and over. There you go. Perfect.
He's trying.
William.
Tell us, William, why did you let the sword get rusted?
No, that was before my time.
Yeah, William, tell me about the campaign for police officers. While we're talking about police officers quite a bit, tell me a little bit about that whole situation.
Yeah, no, I think especially with the whole BLM riots that were going on, seeing how much flack that the police were getting for just trying to keep us safe and do their job, we, part of our 50-state Rosary Tour was going to each capital in all 50 states and then 2 territories, and amidst the BLM riots going on, praying the rosary for the restoration of order, and then showing them support. We give them St. Michael's medals. We try to encourage them every time we see them, thank them for their service, and they're always super appreciative of it.
If I can add something to that, so last year I think it was 1,100 pro-police rosary rallies we organized, and I don't know if William was actually there, but I got this story firsthand. We can't always be everywhere we want to be, so I'm not always able to participate in everything. I'd love to always be traveling with all the caravans, but I can't. Got to hold the fort here. Stuff to do. Our TFP Student Action up north, they're the ones that get a lot of action at the liberal universities, but they went to New York City because everybody knows about the NYPD, right? They're in all the movies, especially. Everybody knows about them. So they played bagpipes and drums and prayed a rosary for the police outside of.
It was in the Bronx.
Was it You were there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Why am I talking about this?
No, we played that. We just formed up right outside and we just started playing the bagpipes and like, what's going on? So then they all just showed up. They were super happy.
But what I heard was that, or Dominic was telling me, I was practicing bagpipes with one of our other pipers, and he opened his bagpipe case, and I saw a ball cap in there. I'm like, Dominic, what are you doing with a ball cap? and he says, pick it up. And it was an NYPD official, ball cap. I said, where'd you get this? And after that rally that we were just talking about, playing the pipes to the police, they let y'all in, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
They let y'all in to the building, and they're like, I'll butcher the accent, but they're like, you ever need a restroom? You ever need anything?
This is your house.
This is your house too. Okay, you come and see us. And
it was really funny because
it.
when we left there, we gave them the St. Michael's Mills, and we left, and we had this cop cruiser like chasing after us.
That's awesome.
Stopped us in the middle of the street to give us like 3 patches. He had some NYPD patches.
Oh, the patches too. Yeah.
Hey, let me tell you that's actually a thing. That is a real honor. Police officers or police departments will sometimes. They'll give people coins.
Okay.
I have a couple of police medallions that I have on my desk at work, and I came to my office one day and found out that one of our local police agencies had left a police patch for me.
Oh, awesome.
So they don't hand those things out just to anybody.
Okay. Yeah, that is really special. We like he briefly mentioned it. We hand out St. Michael medals. I don't have the count in front of me, unfortunately, but it's at least in the tens of thousands now that we've handed out. I've had some officers, I keep them in my pocket usually, but you got to approach the officer correctly, right?
I was like, here you go, and you reach for your back pocket. It's like, I got something for you.
I was at a gas station. That's exactly what I wanted to avoid. But so I just kind of I showed him my hands were empty, approached his car at the pump very slowly, got his attention from far away, and then I gave him a medal. One time, one officer, he just broke down in tears.
Wow.
He was so appreciative because they don't get that.
And look, I don't know if y'all have ever gone on a ride along, and I encourage everybody out there listening, if you find a local police department, a local sheriff's office, go on a ride along. And if they'll let you, go on a ride along at night on the weekend.
Oh, boy. Oh.
I mean, you have no idea what these officers go through. Mm-hmm. It's hard, demanding work. Their patience is tried over and over again. So it means a lot to them when someone comes out and shows them support, especially in the atmosphere we have now. So God bless you all for doing that.
Yeah, real quickly, William, could you talk a little bit about the when you're at rallies and the police get involved, because people are like, I'm going to call the police because y'all are here, and things like that. When you're at rallies, what is the relationship like with the TFP and the police when you're doing public square rosary rallies or protests or pambleting, things like that?
Oh, they're always really friendly. We're professional with what we do, and the police are always professional with what they do too. So we know what we can and can't do, what we legally can't do, and what we legally can. And the police usually they're always like, look, what you're doing is totally fine, totally legal. Keep it peaceful, keep it legal, and you're good. And a lot of times they'll be like, yeah, and thanks for doing this.
Do you all wear the coats and ties when you go out there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that distinguishes you right there.
It's pretty funny because they'll come up and people are like screaming and yelling and they're wearing obscene outfits, and then you have the TFP guys in their suits and ties shaking the hand of the police officers. Oh, thank you very much for being out here, officer. And they're screaming at the officers like, arrest y'all, and they're like,
no.
One guy explicitated it at Millersville University back when I lived up there 5 years ago, a long time ago. We had some Satanist catty corner to us at a university, Millersville University, and we were standing with our Pray to End Abortion banner, on our corner, and there was one guy we ended up interviewing. It's all on YouTube if you want to see it, TP Student Action, but our cameraman just said, what do you think? And this normal-looking guy, 20-something, and he looks at our side. He says, well, this right here, see, like right away, I can understand this. We've got the message. I understand what the guys are about. Look how they're dressed. They're peaceful and legal, all this kind of stuff. He looks at the Satanist, says, over here we've got, and he pauses. He's like, we've got some mixed messages over here. We got a lot of black going on. We got a lot of colorful hair. I don't know about this side, just at face value. And that's the idea. Even if it's somebody doesn't have time to stop and talk, they can tell exactly what we're all about right away.
Amen, amen. Well, thank y'all very much for joining us in studio. Mr.
Thank y'all so much for having us. Yeah.
Thank y'all for being on, and we'll definitely have to have y'all back in the future. And I think people really enjoyed it. We had people in the comment section saying how great it was. A number of people were telling me in the past, you know, they were helping lead Rosary rallies for the October 15th National Rosary rallies. Jesus says, Adrian, you're in the TFP uniform today. True. And then Brooks said he's seen some TFP videos. He said y'all are very brave. So anyway, God bless you. God love you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Catholic Drive Time. Make sure to tune in tomorrow. Rudy, do we know who we're having on tomorrow yet?
Yeah, tomorrow we're going to, actually, I'm going to let Brent say it.
Yeah, tomorrow we have a lawyer who is an expert in bail reform and the cash bail effort, which again affects everybody because it ends up with more criminals on the streets. So more good news tomorrow for GRN listeners.
Thank you for joining us on your Catholic Drive Time, where it is our pleasure to keep you informed and inspired. Join us Monday